How you doing out there in YouTube land? I'm sure I ain't gotta have anybody live, but I'll go ahead and put this up. Everybody can look at it on the channel. Um, I've been trying to do it on my phone, but apparently, if you don't have 1,000 people, you can't live stream from your phone. Um, but anyway, I usually get a lot of questions about when you're laying stuff out, especially since I don't water jet or have anything cut anywhere. Basically, on how I can get a lot of knives, kind of the same things done. I was basically just going to show you on how to lay one out and what I do to lay one out. When I'm doing a folder, I'm trying to get ready for Blade Show now. You can kind of see knife parts. I've got parts of all kinds of stuff just laying around. I've got some that I've just ground the blades. I got to put the heat treat them and put here's the guards. The guards are started. I've started some videos on showing how to do some of these a while back, but anyway, this is a newer knife that I came up with that I'm going to do for the Blade Show. And for everybody that just wanting to start to make a few knives, this is something that you definitely want to keep in mind when you're doing them. 95% of the time, I'll do a knife. Basically, I'll start just about everything with which is kind of a vellum or mylar type paper, and I'll lay everything out on this. Okay, and that's the first step. Then you basically take all that, make sure it all works on paper. What I generally do, I've got a light table, and I usually make sure that you can turn the blades from the pivot, make sure where your stop pin's going to go to, and things like that. And then you just make sure that they're going to work. The After I get one working, and I know I basically okay, I kind of like the way this knife works, or I like the design, or just people like it. I'll usually take that knife that I had made and I'll make a pattern off of it. So I've already made this knife once. I kind of made it rough, just kind of, it was an all titanium knife. And then, so this is, I changed it just a little bit, but I wound up, you just make a pattern. You just make a good solid hard pattern. This was just some old brass sheets that I had. It was just something because you're really not going to abuse this thing any. So you can make it out of this or titanium, or I've made them out of a little bit of everything. But you want something that will hold up reasonably well because you're going to have scribe lines around it. But what will speed you up a whole lot is go ahead and get your pattern and drill every hole that you're going to use on that, on that knife, every single thing that you're going to do on it. So, you basically, here's your pivot, there's my stop pin hole, my back bolster hole, both my handle holes. Here's the ones for the liners to hold the knife together. And you go ahead and do the same thing with the blade. On this one, I even put where the detent ball is generally going to go. I did that one on this one just because, but I generally don't do that. But if I cut my locks by hand basically on that little lathe that's sitting behind me. And the shop is a wreck. If you're looking around going, my gosh, that's what his shop looks like. I just moved into the shop. It's nowhere near set up the way I normally would have it set up, but I've got to try to get ready for the Blade Show, and I can worry about all the rest of this stuff later. But anyway, so as you can tell, if you put this knife together, that's basically what the knife looks like. And this will speed you up tremendously rather than trying to go on paper and things like that. So I'm just going to show you basically on how I set one up. And when I do mine, I usually buy everything in big sheets if I can, just because that's just the easiest way. You just get a lot more out of it. So I've already drilled one of these holes for this, and it's pretty simple. I've just got a little older reamer that's here that I can get this on there. And then I'm just going to clamp this down. And I use a ton of these little breakaway safety knives. I know everybody's saying, man, I can't believe you use those and you make knives, but these are a whole lot easier to deal with than me sharpening something all the time. So all you're going to do is you're just going to scribe this line A lot of people will use layout fluid and things like that, but generally, as long as I get this line scribed pretty decently, I don't have to have it to see it when I'm cutting it out, because I cut everything out on a bandsaw. And this way you can kind of get them all as close as you can to the same. And then, so there's 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to try to make about 10 of this knife for the blade show and just set it up all different with different handles or whatever. But always remember on how you're going to be cutting this out. If you've got a smaller saw or whatever kind of saw, you know, like you couldn't take this in on my saw and cut this off from here, because the end of this titanium is going to wind up hitting the inside of the saw. So I'm setting all this up till I can make one big long cut on this side, and then I can trim these out. But you want to try to remember that you don't want to waste titanium if you can help it, because that just makes it that much more waste, and it costs you that much more to make each knife, because titanium is definitely not cheap. So I'll just go through on how I'm going to do this one so you can watch it, and then I'll do one of the blades. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it might help somebody that's just trying to figure out how to speed up their process, or once they've got it. But just making a good solid hard pattern is by far the best thing I know to do to help you once you get a knife set up the way you want it. The only thing that I would say on your patterns is try not to, like for your stop pin holes and things like that, don't go ahead and make them the full size. The only one that I know you can use for full size is the pivot, because you're going to wind up using the pivot hole to locate everything. So you're going to go ahead and make the pivot full size. Just don't go ahead and ream it. That way it's a little bit undersized compared to what you're doing. So that makes it a little easier to do. Sorry, somebody keeps texting. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and drill one of these holes on this. And like I said, I've got a reamer that's kind of wore out, that's kind of been burned up. I just kind of jam that in the hole. It won't go all the way through the other side because it's not been reamed. And then you can just go ahead and scribe your line. That's basically the liner. Now, I'll move over to blades. I've got a big brand new piece of steel here that I'm going to use. The other one thing I'd like to say about that is when you get a steel and you're thinking about making some knives, and it depends on what you're going to make, but hey, you got to remember that if you lay them out wrong, you're going to waste a lot of steel. You can lay out, say, I'm going to lay out a bunch of fixed blades or something like that, and they've got finger guards or big turns in the handles or something. Well, you got to make sure that you set that up a certain way, because if you don't, you're going to wind up having a couple of inches here and a couple of inches there. That's a lot of waste. So usually when I'm getting ready to lay one out, I'll try my best to make sure how I lay out a certain piece of steel, you know, on something like this. Okay, I could probably get a blade here, and then as long as I do it right, I can turn the other side, and as long as I stay pretty close to the edge, I'll have enough room to do one over here. Just always kind of remember that. I try to buy as big a pieces of steel as I can. This one, I just needed a piece of CPM 154, and the guy had it, so I wound up getting it from him. and I just decided that I'd go ahead and make folders out of it instead of fixed blades. And with this piece and it being as wide as it is, I'm pretty sure I can lay out two at a time, and that works out great. So that's just the best way to do it. Just make sure you try to not waste, steel if you can possibly help it, because it'll just save you money in the long run. So anyway, I'm just basically just going to place this on there. I try to get pretty close to the edge. This one doesn't have any big rolled up edges, so I can actually work pretty close to the edges on this one. I have to use vice grips on this. This one's thick enough. The other is that on blades, especially if you're not going to use a spot and drill, which I'm not using a spot and drill to go through these. I have some that are the same size. They're 186 or something. It's about 3/16 that I'll spot drill and go through. But this drill bit is brand new. I know that I'm going to cut true on these, and then I've got to ream them. These are undersized drill bits, so then you got to ream them to the right size. But just try to lay out on the edges the best you can, unless it's Damascus. And on Damascus, you got to kind of watch the edge. You sometimes can get weld separations and stuff around the edge if you're not real careful. So other than that, you're just going to drill this hole, try to keep your steel flat. Get you a drill bit or a reamer or whatever. It's about the same size. Get it in there, and then just go ahead and scribe your lines as good as you can. Don't slip and cut your fingers. And yes, I have done that before, especially after I've been down here with a bunch of beer. I can do that kind of thing. Now, there's a little hole that I've already got in this pattern to go ahead and drill, take a little metal out of it for my stop pin. Now, I won't put that in here until I've cut it. I just don't want to put that kind of stuff in there. After I've cut it out, I will go back and then I'll drill that little hole. And then I'll wind up taking all this out with a file anyway. But what I was talking about, making sure you get your steel laid out right. I doubt you can see those lines, but basically with the hard pattern, see, now I can just take this over here, turn the blade around, and come here, and I've got a little bit wider than an 1/8 inch in between those patterns. So I got plenty of room on those, and I can get two right here. So more than likely, I'll probably get 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. I'll probably get to almost 10 blades by the time I get to here. And then you got quite a bit of steel. But like I said, if you just laid them all out here and here, and then just hope for the best on the other side, you're going to be wasting a lot of material. So I would suggest not doing that the best you could. And that's 2 blades right there. We'll scribe this line. And there's number 2. And I'll continue to do this. And then this knife's going to be a frame lock. So this one's 160. This is the side that I'm going to put handles on. So it's 160,000. So I got a whole bunch more of them to do. But I just thought I'd show everybody, hey, just make a pattern. It definitely simplifies things. And that's really all I got this time. Leave messages if you all want any help or something I can show you, and I'll do my best to do so.